happy to welcome Emmy-nominated actress Naomi Grossman to the show. Naomi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing fantastic. I was just marveling at all the fan art that you have there behind you. It's pretty impressive collection.
Yeah, and this is just these two walls. There's a whole other the rest of the room you're not seeing. It's quite remarkable. This is my happy place. I come here to feel good about myself. Knowing that my art inspired others' art. It's a beautiful kind of full circle experience.
Well, I can imagine that it has to be flattering on your end, because just seeing for those who are watching the video version, there's just a huge amount of fan art, from a huge poster to this giant black and white drawing. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
but that's gonna be flattering.
I don't think the room is quite pan ready, but
Yeah, no, that's awesome though. That's got to be such a, like, how do you react when people submit you fan art like that?
I mean, I invariably asked to take a picture and post it on my Instagram. It's one of those moments, like, I can't believe that, here I am. It's been what, like 10 years since Pepper was a thing. And yet people are still painting her. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into Pepper a little bit later on in the conversation, but I always like to start the interviews with this, because I say ad nauseum on the show that when it comes to acting, directing, however, what field you want to get into in the industry, there's not really a how-to guidebook. Everyone kind of has their own unique story. And I was reading up on your bio, and you grew up in Denver, Colorado, and then attended Northwestern University, which I don't think I've talked to anyone who's gotten into the industry who, one, went to Northwestern, or two, lived in Colorado. So what?
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've talked to anyone in the industry who hasn't gone to Northwestern.
Oh, really? That's because I always think
I'm exaggerating. And obviously I probably meet more people from Northwestern than your average person. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people here in Hollywood, that went to USC or UCLA or, and they say, man, if I wanted to meet someone in Hollywood, I needed to have gone to Northwestern. So yeah, we kind of joke that it's like the mafia, like we kind of take care of our own. I don't know how many, audition, or I signed with my agent because she was like, oh, I went to Northwestern. And I was like, boom, now we're fast friends.
It's like your family when you go to the same university.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it was one of those things that didn't even occur to me when I was applying. I wasn't thinking about an alumni with connections, but it's been very, very helpful.
Absolutely. Northwestern, for those who don't know, is one of the most prestigious and well-respected universities in the entire country. So that's amazing. And what was it like, growing up in Denver, and what were the performing arts and the creatives like? Because, like here in Florida, we've got, community theater and, things like that. And we've had some films that have been made, in the area a long time ago. But what was it like growing up in Denver? Did you know that you wanted to get into acting in the entertainment industry early on?
Yes. I mean, I would say probably with the exception of the snow, it was probably a lot like Florida. Like there really wasn't a whole lot going on, film and television wise. And yet I knew from a really young age, I came out of the womb kicking, with jazz hands, high kicking. So yeah, I knew from really young age. I was got involved with like community theater, like you said, and regional commercials, and kind of anything and everything that came out of Colorado, which wasn't a whole lot, but I I recently did that little like my name is challenge on TikTok. I don't know if you saw where actors would say, my name is Naomi, but they call me. And I actually included a clip from one of the very first things I ever did in Denver called Father Dowling Mysteries. You can see me as the confirmation kid. I recently reposted it on Instagram and Facebook. But anyway, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny. Like now with Facebook, we know what our, high school crush ate for breakfast. But even if it weren't for Facebook, if you ask my high school crush, what is Naomi Grossman doing right now? They would say she's probably on a stage or in front of a camera somewhere. So, I've been it was never a doubt as to what I was going to be when I grew up.
Did your family support you in that? Did you grow up in a creative family?
Yes, I did. My dad is an architect. My mom is a pianist. So while they're not, actors per se, they definitely knew what it was to be an artist and to be sort of drawn by this, impassioned by this thing, and like that you really can't deny it. They were always very, very supportive.
Well, that helps too, because, having that strong foundation can really be beneficial to, having a successful career later on.
Yeah. I mean, they made me at the end of the day. They're the ones that took me to the, theater and the ballet and the cinema and the opera and the symphony and you name it. I spent my whole childhood in an audience looking up there, kind of wishing I were one of them. So had they, tried to force the actor out of me, had they, pressured me into law school or to go be a doctor, well, that would have been really cruel.
No, exactly. So you attend Northwestern, and then once you graduate from there, what steps did you take next to get into how did you get your foot in the door of the acting business?
Well, I guess I got my foot in when I did that Father Dowling episode, because that earned me my SAG card, which, Screen Actor Skill, which is usually the first step. That's the first kind of big, milestone for the actor first moving out into Hollywood. I already had that, so I was a step ahead. And yet, I struggled at first. I moved out here immediately after school. I'd survived 4 Chicago winters and I was done. Besides, I had a boyfriend who had beat me here. He'd moved out to be a PA on Friends, which at the time, that was like the biggest show. And the fact that he was like getting Jennifer Aniston coffee, I mean, forget it. He was made. He was basically like, he might as well just, go get his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame already.
Yeah, and just retire after that.
Yeah, just retire. Yeah. So of course I beelined it to Hollywood to go, be with a boyfriend. That lasted like 5 minutes. But it got me out here. Not I wasn't going to get here on my own, but, I wanted to meet Jennifer Aniston. So, I came out here with, I was pretty presumptuous. When I first moved out here, I had this kind of very like, all right, well, I'm ready for my clothes off. I'd been the lead of all the plays. So next step, my own sitcom, right? I mean, that's how these things work.
Naturally.
And sadly, it is how these things work, or at least I've seen it work that way. Zooey Deschanel, who dropped out of Northwestern, waltzed out here and had her own sitcom like immediately. I mean, Zach Braff, who was in my grade, he wasn't even a theater major, and he was all of a sudden, cast on Scrubs. So I've seen it happen, and I didn't understand why it shouldn't happen for me. Of course, I don't have like Zooey Deschanel's family, etc. So yeah, that architect dad and mom and pianist mom were only so helpful in that regard. But I had to take my own little kind of unorthodox route there, but I got there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we were saying earlier, there's not a how-to guidebook on how to get into Hollywood. It's just half the battle is getting out there, which, you did, even though the relationship didn't work out, you still made your way out there. So there's a silver lining in everything.
Oh, 100% agree with that. Yep.
So kind of stepping forward a little bit, how did you get the role as Pepper on American Horror Story? Because I truly think that Pepper is one of, if not the most recognizable character in that entire show, just because you had such a unique look with the shaved head and the prosthetics that it just, it just immediately grabs your attention. You're like, holy crap, I want to see what's going on there. So how did you get that role?
Well, I had an audition. I had an agent at the time called me with it. And the audition consisted of a monologue of Jessica Lange's from season 1. And then they gave me a ball and they asked them to, as if I were a 4-year-old, try to get them to play with them. Of course, I didn't know what that meant. They're very secretive. They weren't about to let on, they weren't about to use words like, pinhead or microcephalia, you know what I mean? Because the minute they do that, then all of a sudden, every actor through their door, every agent, manager, reading their emails is like, jig is up. So they didn't let on as to what I was until well after I was cast. It wasn't until I was in a, meeting with makeup and they were applying all these prosthetics and said, you're going to look like this. So you're kind of probably want to act like that, because let's face it, they go together. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing the lengths that they take to keep things secret. I mean, they would, from the makeup chair, they would actually cloak me in a full burqa to transport me to set. And I mean, I remember riding around in these little golf carts, like whizzing past, tourists on the studio lot and thinking, wow, those people probably think I'm, I don't know, Michael Jackson or, Lady Gaga or somebody, you know what I mean? Like they have no idea, who could it be? Who's in the burqa?
But that's really cool that they do that though, because, you hear stories about what happened with the latest Spider-Man movie with them sneaking like Willem Dafoe and Jamie Foxx and others on set wearing those same burqas. It adds, I think as someone who would work behind the scenes, at least if I were doing it, it adds that certain element of surprise. And I think that's really cool.
Well, and that's why, there was this rumor that I'd been kicked off set because the security guy didn't recognize me. Well, yeah, because he'd never actually seen me before. We were working on location outside the Santa Ana courthouse. And so there are technically just people in the wild walking up, and I could have absolutely been one of them, like Grazing Craft Services. He didn't recognize me as crew. He didn't recognize he's one of the actors, because how could he? I unless you were inside those, that fortress tent, or you could see through my burqa, you had no idea what I looked like. So I don't blame the guy.
Yeah.
Plus, they got a good story out of it.
Yeah, for sure. What was your reaction? Because you said you didn't know what the final makeup and final product looked like until you actually saw it for the first time. What was your initial reaction?
I mean, I was excited. I just love really big characters. So, I like playing house. I always wanted to be like the evil stepmother. You know what I mean? I never wanted to be the ingenue pretty girl, I always wanted to be the biggest, most over the top sort of grotesque character. And so it is kind of ironic I should happen into this one, because she really is all of that.
Well, I can imagine that, it's almost more liberating and more freeing to play an over the top character, or like you had mentioned, an evil stepmother or a villain, because you can do stuff that you wouldn't get to do in normal everyday life.
Well, yes. And I'm getting, I get the added benefit of all these people telling me how beautiful I am. No one ever said anything until Pepper, you know what I mean? I've always looked like this. It's only now that the whole internet tells me, all at once, oh, I'm gorgeous.
Well, I truly think that it's one of the best prosthetic and makeup jobs that I've seen in either film or TV, just because in setting up this interview, the publicist sent a side-by-side picture of you, how you normally look, and then a picture of Pepper. And it just really hits home like how great of a job that they did. But one other thing I got to ask about with this character. So you legit shaved your head, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah. How was that? Like, were you told to do that? Or did you just say, okay, I'm going to go all out and I'm going to
voluntarily take a razor to my head? Yeah, I mean, it seemed like that was important to the for the role. So I'm a, team player. I mean, I would have liked to have cut my hair. I'm single. I'm trying to mingle. But at the same time, I didn't want to screw this up. I wasn't about to lose this part. So, yeah, for Asylum, they shaved everything but that little tuft of hair, and then for Freak Show, they actually shaved it all. And I think that was just a courtesy because, Salty was a just bald man. And so if he got to go about his life in a normal way, why shouldn't I? So I lost the wig and I just kind of rocked the bald head, which was great, especially because we were in New Orleans. It was July. Ooh. Like I wasn't trying to keep a stitch on me that I didn't absolutely have to have. Yeah. Although there were a few really kind of compromising moments where I would be recognized in the French Quarter and people would ask to take a photo. And I was like, yes, but can you not post it till September? Because otherwise people are going to wonder what's Pepper doing, bald, running around New Orleans where they happen to be shooting American Horror Story.
I couldn't fathom wearing a wig in New Orleans because I only live 2 hours from there. And in July, August, the heat is just unbearable.
Yes, it is.
So talk to me about this latest film that just came out that you were a part of. It's a romantic comedy with a vampire twist called Bite Me. How did you hear about this project and what drew you to want to get involved with it?
So Naomi McDougall-Jones, the other Naomi, actually there were three. Our makeup person was also a Naomi.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, but she wrote and stars and apparently had me in mind for the role as she was writing it. And sure enough, they did a few stage readings in New York where, she lived at the time. And kept getting the note, this Chrissy character just isn't working. And she kept saying, because Naomi Grossman isn't playing her yet. Just wait. So, obviously I had pretty big shoes to fill because I wanted, she had obvious expectations as to what Naomi Grossman would be. And obviously I'm the only one that can necessarily fill that, but what if I don't, she came to me with a role, and of course, I was very, very flattered. I just really responded to the script. I thought it was just really well done. It was well crafted. I often say, as an architect's daughter, I know that if the blueprints don't hold, the house is not going to stand. Same here. If the script has holes in it, those holes are going to be even worse when they're, put into play. So, those are things you can't just fix and post. So, I signed on right away. I was excited to play. Besides, I got to marry sort of my two loves. I come from comedy and yet hadn't really been cast in a comedy much. And, at least aside from the things I produced myself. And then of course there was this sort of horror twist, which I knew would satiate fans. So it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you about that. How was it playing a comedic role when you're known for horror, specifically American Horror Stories. So I'm sure as an actor that had to be a little refreshing in a way to play something a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm known for horror,
right?
But that's people who don't actually know me. Like the people that know me know, like, oh, Naomi's funny. In fact, I worked for years at the Groundlings Sunday Company, that, which for people who aren't familiar, it's just this sort of like SNL factory. I mean, you name it, Kristen Wiig, Phil Hartman, Lisa Kudrow, Melissa McCarthy. I mean, Will Ferrell. I mean, it's literally like anyone and everyone funny came out of there. I mean, that's not fair to all the other comedy theaters out there, but I'm just saying it's they've got a pretty good little ratio going on. Anyway, that's I came out of there, and I always felt that this business is so hard that you got to get a gimmick, you find your niche and just stick to that. And the fact is that was a little myopic on my part. Instead of just focusing on comedy, I should have just focused on characters, right? Because that is what I do. And yet characters exist in all genres, right? I mean, let's face it, comedy and horror really work really well together in that regard. You look at some of these famous horror tropes, like, I don't know, Freddy Krueger, the guy with like scissors for hands, or there's so many that I feel like it's one of those things. It's almost like you could just dial it up for comedy, dial it down for drama. I mean, Pepper could totally exist on SNL. I mean,
absolutely.
I could see her, I could see her kicking it with the Coneheads, or, in the passenger seat with Toonces the cat, completely. But she's not. She's in the asylum. She's at the freak show. It's just a matter of sort of dialing that up or dialing that down, and being conscious of, the world you're in, the tone of the show, and meeting your surroundings. Because let's face it, I was working alongside, like, Jessica Lange, and like, I'm not going to Toonces the cat with Jessica Lange. You know what I mean?
By the way, SNL's missing out on a Pepper Conehead skit. That would be amazing.
I mean, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Just a phone call away.
I'm sure they're listening. I'm sure Lorne Michaels is watching this.
Oh, going, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. So one thing I did want to say about Bite Me, because I did get the chance to watch it, and I find it, as I've gotten older, that you have pretty much every genre has a formula that you can pick up on, whether it's horror, comedy, the different types of comedy. But what makes it interesting is when you add little nuances and little twists to it that make it different. In this case being, the vampire element, which you don't really see in a romantic comedy. I mean, they tried it with Twilight, but that was more of like a drama. We've seen it in, like classic horror movies, but I can't really think of a vampire romantic comedy that I've ever seen. So I thought, it added such a cool twist to it. And I really enjoyed the movie. I think it was really well written. I thought the acting was good. You could tell that all the cast members had fun, working together, because chemistry and enjoyment from actors, like, it does bleed through the screen. And I felt that. So I really enjoyed the movie.
Awesome. And I especially appreciate the little vampire reference, bleeding through the screen.
That was unintentional, but I'll take credit for it.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So now that Bite Me has wrapped up, what's next for you? Do you have any current projects in the works that you'd want to talk about?
Yeah. I shot a film recently called Replica, which is stars Mickey Rourke. I play a neo-Nazi meth head. So very far from myself, thankfully. But it's an indie movie. So kind of like Bite Me, it's like, we don't ever know when these things are gonna, happen. It takes money. And so we'll see. We may not talk about that for a while. Oh, I do have another film actually that just came out on Streaming this week. It's called Just Swipe. I haven't seen the movie, so I'm not going to say much more because I don't know if I'm any good in it. I don't know if the movie's any good, but it's also kind of, it's out there, available for streaming. Also, I've been working on my own one-woman show throughout the pandemic. It's written, it's memorized, it's blocked, it's ready to put on stage. So I'm hoping that we'll manage to have that streaming too. Now with this proliferation of these 1 hour comedy specials, we're all stuck inside, kind of like looking for alternative entertainment. And well, I personally think American Horror Story is the perfect antidote to that, but we'll see. To be continued on that.
Well, that's been one positive about the pandemic, is there's been everybody being stuck at home. Writers can write, actors can learn how to write and create their own projects. So I think I've said this back, late 2020, but I think over the next year or two, we're going to see this huge surge in creativity of projects that have been planned for the last 2 years. So I look forward to seeing more about your one woman show.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, especially because these things take forever. Like, people have these ideas that, like, these Marvel movies just come out every other minute. No, they literally take like 10 years, and like, and that's with a Marvel budget. Forget about like little indie movies like, Bite Me or my own little one woman show. Like, whew, it's a miracle that anything gets out.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a website or social media that you'd like to plug so the listeners can follow you?
Yeah, sure. I'm at Naomi W. Grossman on all socials. And of course, my website is naomigrossman.net.
And last question, I always like to end the interviews with this. What is one thing you have watched recently, whether it's a movie or a series, that you would recommend to people?
Well, I just happened to happen upon it last night. Pam and Tommy.
I haven't watched that yet, but it looks wild.
It's really fun. Yeah, I don't know what to say. There's a scene between Tommy and his member that is just, talk about prosthetics. I mean, I have to believe that that was some puppetry of the penis, if you will, which I talk about some creativity. Yes. Somebody was cooped up in the pandemic and thought of that, let me tell you.
Okay, I have to see this now.
Yeah, you do.
I heard that was a possibility, but I was like, that can't be true. But now that I've heard it from someone who's seen it, I'll have to check it out.
I can't imagine. I mean, people ask me about my time in the makeup chair. I mean, that guy, he's getting made up, but not the face. Yeah.
That I'm sure that would probably make for a very interesting story.
I am sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Naomi, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. This was great.
Of course. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.